Thomas Tetzlaff from Volkswagen Canada. Say hello.
Hello.
And we're in Sac-Comi, Quebec, a wonderful area with absolutely gorgeous weather to showcase what today?
Well, what we're showcasing, Zach, is 4Motion technology. You know, you take a look at the car market in Canada, and Canadians are voting with their checkbooks. They are buying more all-wheel drive vehicles every year. It is something we've seen certainly within our lineup. Our penetration last year was almost double what it was in 2016. So we thought it would be a great idea to come up here, like you say, to Sac-Comi and test drive our 4Motion equipped cars.
All right, stop for a sec. So you're saying in 1 year, you doubled all-wheel drive sales?
You got it. From 2016 to 2017, almost doubled. It was about a 96% increase in four-wheel drive sales.
Now, is it because of vehicles like this? So we're sitting in the Alltrack, and also the Golf Sportwagen line is available with all-wheel drive. But then you've got new utilities, too. So what's the mix?
Well, it's actually a really nice mix, if you can believe it. What's happened with this particular car that we're sitting in, which is an Alltrack, and the Sportwagen that it comes from, we saw sales of that vehicle double from the year before, and that's 100% due to the availability of 4Motion all-wheel drive. Because what we've seen now is the total sales of this wagon are now 80% all-wheel drive. So that's a lot.
Sportwagen included.
Sportwagen included. It has just been a runaway success for us. Couldn't be happier, and that's great. We're hoping that continues. But last year we had a couple of significant introductions. First and foremost, we started with the Atlas, our big 7-passenger sport utility. That took off like a gangbuster. Which
how is that selling? It's outselling some of its main rivals,
well,
right?
It certainly is, and I won't name any of them by name, but we're really proud the way this thing...
Honda.
Hey, let's be nice. It's done great. You know, here was a segment of the market that Volkswagen was not ever involved in, and the project was, hey, let's get there. And
I think it surprised a lot of people. Like, we've had it out on the ice here today. I've driven it a few times, and I'm pleasantly surprised with this. Because I said in my initial review, you know, Volkswagen was last at the dance with a full-size 3-door SUV. We certainly learned from everybody else's dance steps, and you got it right, I think.
Well, pretty much. You're right about that one. We really did our homework on this one, and I'll be the first to admit we were really slow getting into this market, but it's not something that Volkswagen's really known for. And that's great, but it's also our biggest trick, right? Because we're not known, we have to get our name out there. And that ties back to your original question, why are we here? We're here to showcase that Volkswagen does indeed have a significant player in the market. And Atlas, you know, what we're selling it at is big. It's 7-passenger, and I'm talking real 7 adults. The seats in the back are comfortable for adults. Not only that, but they're easy to get to. And behind those seats, there's still some luggage space. So if you're going
That's actually
somewhere,
quite a bit. What did we have recently? We had a Land Rover Discovery, which is a big unit. And the seats are all up. There was really no space in the back. With your seats up, there's actually quite a bit of room. So kudos to you. Now, back to this Alltrack for a moment. The Canadian group is here today, and then you have a U.S. group that's coming tomorrow. In the U.S., the Alltrack is available kind of all the way down through the what would be a comparable Sportwagen. So you have it as the top trim in Canada. Are we going to get Comfort Line, Trend Line, Alltracks?
Let me answer that in a very elongated manner.
Here we
I'll
go.
explain the U.S. strategy, and I'll explain the Canadian strategy, and how the Canadian strategy is changing. And let's start with the U.S., as you mentioned. They have Alltrack as a separate model. They have Sportwagen, and then they have Alltrack.
Right.
And they have 4Motion available on some of their cars, and they have 4Motion as standard on the Alltrack, and they have 3 different trim levels. They have S, SE, and SEL, which is equivalent roughly to the Canadian Trendline, Comfort Line, and Highline.
Sure.
In Canada, as you mentioned, we started off with Alltrack as being our top trim. So it only comes one way. That's loaded. Leather seats, you know, great big sunroof, Navi system, everything you could possibly want were on the car standard. And we thought, you know what, for the people looking for this look with that raised suspension, the big wheels and such, they would want them well equipped. Now for 2018, we've made a couple of slight adjustments because remember, we've also got 4Motion all-wheel drive available in our regular sport wagons. All 3 trim levels, Trendline, Comfort Line, and Highline.
And manual.
That's where I was getting at. For 2018, the significant addition is we've added the availability of a manual transmission across the board.
But not in, and in the Alltrack.
In the Alltrack, of
right,
course.
right.
What do you think I'm going to be driving in the next couple of weeks?
Actually, you and I drove to Detroit in one.
That's right. So that was our significant change to the model for 2018. Going forward, here's the answer to your question. Yes, we are considering offering another version of Alltrack without some of the features. And what I mean by that is instead of
maybe
18-inch
not leather
wheels,
seats, smaller wheels.
Exactly.
Decontented.
Decontented a little bit so that you still get all the attributes of the Alltrack, the race suspension, the look and such, but we'll take out a few things and bring the price point down a little bit.
All
and
right.
that's under examination.
Okay, I'm sure it's going to happen because it makes sense, right? You want to sell more of these, not less of them.
Oh, that's for sure.
Okay, so it's early days with the manual. What's the take rate been on that? I can see, like, auto nerds like us who love wagons and manuals are all going to say we want one, but the general public.
Well, here's one thing I'll say. When you don't have something available, it appears that everybody wants it. And the minute you have it available, well, then the reality sinks in. I'm pleased to report, though, with the manual transmission availability on the 4Motion, we have seen significant penetration.
Because there's nothing else like it.
There's nothing else like it. And there's still a large number of people out there who like manual transmissions, who like wagons, who like 4Motion all-wheel drive. As you say, it's real enthusiasts, fanatics, if you will. We've got it. They're coming. It's staying.
We have Golf R, which is your top dog in the Golf family. We have the Alltrack, which is same other than cosmetics in the suspension to the Sportwagen, right?
Correct.
You've got Tiguan and Atlas, and we're out on the snow and the ice. This is the car that impressed me the most, the Alltrack or the Sportwagen, because the Golf R, wider tires, more throttle response, so you can spin those wheels easier. This one's just a little bit less power, longer wheelbase, narrower tire. It was the easiest to drive quickly in the snow of all of the vehicles. So it says something about what you got here.
Well, you said it. We've stuck with this formula for a long time. And we didn't stick with it just because. Mm-hmm. We stuck with it because it works. Mm-hmm. It is an excellent formula. And they do sell. And the fact of the matter is, Canadians continue to buy more and more sport utilities every year. And that's fine. We have no problem. As I said, we've got a new Atlas, we've got a new Tiguan. Knock yourself out. But we're not giving up on this wagon because there's a lot of people that absolutely love it. And I think we would be doing them a disservice if we pulled this out of the lineup.
All right, let's get into Golf R. The European version got a horsepower bump. The Canadian or the North American version stuck at 292 horsepower. A lot of people miss a sunroof. What can you say about that? Why did we not get a horsepower bump where Europe did? Because the GTI did get a horsepower bump.
The GTI, what it essentially got for 2018, for 2016 and 2017, we had a performance package in the GTI, and that gave you a 10 horsepower
bump.
But
the problem was it was a package on top of the already expensive, and it kind of priced the car out.
Expensive?
The one
I drove was a great value.
The one I drove was almost $40,000 2 years ago.
And there's a point in there.
And now the new Autobahn, nicely equipped, is 36.
Well, yeah, it's a great value. I don't know why we're not at a dealership now buying one, but it got
I know a guy.
Exactly. Golf R is what your question was at. Why didn't we see a horsepower bump? The Golf R in Europe was always a little bit higher than North America in horsepower for two reasons. One, because of emissions, and two, because of measurements.
Fuel?
Fuel as well. Well, part of the reason that we increased the horsepower or how we increased the horsepower is tuning. Mm-hmm. We didn't change anything in the engine. The pistons aren't any bigger.
But why can't we get that tuning? Which is what everybody's going to say. Thomas, we want the same tuning.
Well, of course. And the fact of the matter is, until we can guarantee the highest quality of fuel throughout North America, it's not going to happen, because there's always a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is, even with Golf R, you can drive it on regular fuel, but it's going to derate the engine. You're going to produce less horsepower. And if we bring in the tuning, there is the potential for adverse reaction to the engine.
Sure.
Knocking, whatever. So, not happening.
Okay, so a year or so ago, Golf R and GTI, I was in the Golf R camp because it was right around $40,000. And then the fully equipped GTI was around $38,000. So it was no brainer to make that jump. Mm-hmm. But now you put the price of the Golf R a little bit, about $2,000, much more content now, especially in the dash and what have you. And then the GTI, you adjusted the price. The Autobahn is a great package at $36,000. So I've kind of shifted the other way now. I've gone back to the GTI is kind of the one I would get. Even though you're here for a 4Motion event, you put good tires on, that's a hell of a car. You
Well,
drive one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I made that reference this morning. I said we can debate all day long about the merits of good winter tires versus the merits of all-wheel drive. But Canadians voted, and they want all-wheel drive. I'm also hopeful that they'll get great winter tires to go on that all-wheel drive.
And that's what we're seeing today. We're using Continental
Exactly.
Winter tires. Okay, let's get to the two units, utilities. Tiguan is selling like crazy, right?
It is indeed.
And are these all new Volkswagen buyers, or are they return buyers?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it's a little bit of both. We're seeing the people, because Tiguan's been around for a while, right?
Yeah,
it was in its 9th year.
Yeah.
It's been here a while. There's a lot of people that are replacing Tiguans that are coming into the new one, because essentially what we heard from our customer base was, it's got to get bigger. We love the car, but it's got to get bigger.
And it did.
It got a lot
Well, it
bigger.
went from one of the smallest in the quote unquote compact utility space now to one of the biggest, because there's only 3 players with 3 rows of available seating. There's yourself, Rogue, and Outlander from Mitsubishi, and now you're one of the biggest. So you've gone from one of the smallest to one of the biggest.
Yeah,
some people say they miss the nimbleness, this sort of what was kind of like a bigger GTI almost, because it had that 200 horsepower engine. So now it's got less horsepower. So how do you square that? Bigger vehicle than before, but less power.
Well, it has less horsepower, but it has more
Torque. I like the torques.
Exactly. So with 221 pound-feet of torque, you've got no problem getting out of your own way with this vehicle. It is bigger, as you mentioned, and not just by a little bit. It's 27 centimeters longer. So this vehicle is big, so much so that it has what you mentioned, that is the availability of a third-row seat. And let's be frank about this. This is not an Atlas, and we'll talk about the Atlas in a minute. This is a 5+2. This is for those cases where, you go to soccer practice and on the way home...
By the way, can you take my daughter or my son with you? Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Flip those back seats, boom, 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 and off you go. The nice thing is, any trim level, Trendline, Comfortline, Highline...
$750.
As a standalone option.
That is really well packaged. I think that's
so.
a good idea.
I think so. We try to package our cars right from the start very well.
Now, let's get into the Atlas. I think it's one of the major surprises to me over the last year, is because every time I drive it, I mentioned it today, how much I'm enjoying it. It's got an old engine. It's got a VR6 that's been in there. It's only been in there for a year, but the engine has been around for 25 years.
An oldie but a goodie.
It is a bulletproof engine now, and it sounds great. It's a little heavy on fuel. You're not going to tell me today, but I would suggest, because we're not going to get a 3-liter TDI anymore, maybe a 3-liter turbocharged engine might be in the works down the road.
Right now, the engines that are available in this car, which is the VR6 that you mentioned, and the 2-liter turbo from the GTI, those are the engines that are going to be running in this Atlas for this year. They're the engines that are going to be running in the Atlas for the next year. Beyond that, I'm sure our engineers are working on stuff, but I couldn't give you details because I frankly don't know them myself.
All right. T-Roc, right?
Yes.
Is the smaller utility.
Wee little.
So you have Atlas, Tiguan, T-Roc, which is sold where?
T-Roc just went on sale at the end of November in Europe. So Europe has it, and it'll go on sale, if it hasn't already, in China. China's our biggest market right now.
So here's the question. When is it going to be for sale? Because there's no end of need for utilities. We're seeing more and more utilities coming onto the market from everybody. So are we going to get a T-Roc-like vehicle?
Excellent phraseology there. We will not get the T-Roc, but we will get a T-Roc-like vehicle. There's a project in the works right now, and sooner rather than later, we'll have yet another addition to the Volkswagen family.
Is that going to be shown at the Beijing show?
Probably not.
Oh, okay.
Not this year, anyways.
Okay.
But you never know.
All right. Diesel situation is finally coming to an end. So how many people have brought their cars in for either compliance and keeping them or trading them in? Are you getting towards the end? There was 100,000 plus cars.
There was approximately 104,000 to start with, and we have already completed the transaction with over 70,000 of them, I believe.
And the 3-liter TDIs, which were in basically just the Touareg on the Volkswagen side, are now finally just settling that one.
Yeah, they're in the end stage. It's just before the courts right now for final workaround with claims counsel and such, so we'll be hearing about that.
April 4th, I think. So Are you glad that's all kind of behind you now?
Well, I got to be honest and say yes, of course I am. And I was saddened when this started, and I'll be sad when it ends. But I'll be happy to move forward. We built some great cars, and we've got some great customers who love our product, and we want to move forward with these people.
All right. So, Thomas, thanks for your time. It's always great getting a sort of a state of the Volkswagen world as it reflects in our Canadian marketplace. So thanks for your time, and thanks for having us here in Sekikomi.
Pleasure, Zach. Drive safely.
GoPro, stop recording.
Beep, beep, beep.